Good afternoon, everyone. I thank ODI for inviting me. My name is Philip Thomas. I'm project manager at the World Energy Council, and I manage the Scenarios project. This is the structure of my presentation. The first part, I will briefly describe the WEC Scenarios project, what it aims to do. I will then outline energy efficiency as we see it, and part three, potential futures, which are drawing on the insights on our Scenarios project. So the World Energy Council was begun in 1923 on the back of World War I, and basically it was started to discuss how the infrastructure in Europe could be rebuilt. And since then it has evolved into a global organization. We have produced scenarios on and off since then, and the most recent effort was begun in 2010 under the leadership of Carl Rose, who was the former chief strategist of Shell. We have a global scenario study group, as you can see from the slide. 36% of the members come from Europe, 22 from Asia, 16 from North America, and we also have significant African and Latin American participation. We have 60 members drawn from various sectors, industrial sector, government sectors, and also academic sectors. The scenarios process, broadly speaking, can be placed into four process steps. The first step is an orientation phase where we investigate the drivers influencing the energy system. The second phase is when we draw upon insights through in-depth research and expert input, and we try and identify end states which will evolve into logistically coherent stories, which we call scenarios. The third stage is when we go on a roadshow and we take these scenarios to stakeholders, to policymakers, and we say, this is how we see the world evolving up to 2050. What do you think? And they try and shoot holes in it, which is very good for us. And then we again take that learning, and through a series of successive iterations, we then produce a set of scenarios. The final stage, of course, is when we draw upon our scenarios to extract implications and insights for governments, industry, consumers. This is how we have been building scenarios at the World Energy Council in this recent effort. We have identified 29 issue papers, which I will describe in a moment. We have conducted a series of international workshops where we have traveled to places like Brazil, South Africa, Asia, and we have spoken to energy ministries, we have spoken to energy companies, and we have said, what are the issues you are facing, what are the policies you all use, and what are the needs and challenges you see going ahead. We have also spoken to experts in the field, and we have drawn all their insights and we have distilled them into 116 driving forces, which then we have put into clusters through a clustering exercise. And then we see 2 or 3 draft scenarios emerging. The second phase of the scenarios construction, where we are currently in, is when we start texting and describing the scenario stories. We then try and analyze the cross-impact analysis between clusters. So that is to say, how does one cluster influence each of the other clusters? Do we see any significant correlation? Which are the crucial clusters which we need to focus on? Then we also conduct further research on certain selected issues. And then finally, we do a modeling exercise where we provide quantitative data for our qualitative storylines. And then we go through a series of iterations and challenges. As I described to you earlier, we produce our scenarios, and then we have our implications and insights. Currently, that red arrow shows you that we are in that stage. We are in the first iterative stage. We have 5 work streams.
You have another 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Economics, finance, trade, energy systems technologies, resource availability and access, consumer behavior and acceptance, and government policies. And we have produced a significant amount of material on these issues. These are the first insights from our discussion papers, and I think you'll find this interesting. The first is we see the world developing as a world of conflicting interests, deep social tensions, and balancing these interests will be a key priority for policymakers going forward. Energy efficiency will be a must, and this is also as a tool to address increasing demand and ensure that supply is sufficient. Energy poverty and access to energy in developing countries is another critical driver. We have seen that there is significant difference in regional priorities when we have traveled in our scenarios project, energy access in Africa is crucial, and climate change in the same region is not so important. Water and food shortfalls by 2030, this is something which we see developing. Fossil fuels and gas will play a major role for decades, and possibly shortfalls by 2050 as well. CCS, we expect it to be quite late to come, and strongly increasing prices for industry, manufacturing, and transport. There is also competition for resources and resource nationalism. Finally, demand-side management will become increasingly important, and public governance will be back in some areas, like in Europe. This is again some emerging messages which we see. I would like to draw your attention to the importance of funding from private and public sources for infrastructure and renewable energy, which will be crucial as we go forward. Concerns about political instability, skills shortage, especially in Europe, water stresses due to increasing urbanization and agricultural activity, challenge of meeting the rising middle class demands in India and China, which is what is actually driving growth in energy demand. And also, consumer acceptance and willingness to accept technology and price change will be very fundamental in the transition to a renewables future. I will skip over this energy efficiency because we have experts on the panel here. I wanted to draw your attention to this slide, energy use per capita. You can see how it is trending, and we can expect that that trend will continue significantly. Some energy efficiency trends which we have observed. There is a global decrease in energy intensity by 1.4% per year between 1990 and 2008. I must state that from 2005, this increase has been at the rate of 1.9% per annum, and a significant driver for this has been high oil prices. Yes. Energy efficiency trends, yes. Improvements have been industry-driven in OECD. There is converging industry trends due to globalization, trade-offs in transport, rapid growth of electricity use in households, and energy intensity of the service sector is increasing. Yes, key messages. Over 90% of the increase in demand is expected to come from developing Asia and the Middle East. Increasing urbanization is going to lead to demand for energy efficient buildings and public transport. Significant volatility in commodities markets, as we have observed that many of these commodities have been tracking financial paper markets instead of following fundamentals. There is an increasingly interconnected world with rise of social networking, and this can result in increased political uncertainty. Without a radical breakthrough in energy storage, we expect that fossil fuels will continue to dominate transport and power generation sector. This is an area which policymakers need to look at very carefully to ensure that enough R&D and funds have been allocated. These are two potential scenarios which we have arrived at, very, very draft stage, but essentially at the heart of these two scenarios, we look at, in one of the scenarios, we look at a world where the market leads and the state facilitates the role of the market. In the second scenario, we expect the state to lead, and we see a new form of state capitalism, which is sort of a hybrid model, where you have a strong role of the state, but they also are significantly influenced by market forces, but they do maintain control, and we think that we see this trend developing in India and China.
Good, you're going to have to stop in 5 seconds.
This is the final slide, the implications for energy efficiency. I draw your attention to the last point, where we see that the role of governments will be crucial in rolling back subsidies, ensuring that the true cost of energy is reflected in energy prices, and adequate policy and capital support is provided for energy efficiency.
Which is actually a really good point to end on, which we will come back to. Thank you very much.